Hello, good evening to all of you. Very warm welcome, maybe welcome again to Berlinale Talents. We are the talent initiative of the Berlinale, inviting 200 filmmakers every year from all around the world, from different fields of work. One of them is production design. I know many of you, I don't need to tell that because you are part of our program, but we also have public audience here, so thank you all for joining us today. It is a great pleasure that we continue our collaboration with the Production Designers Collective here. Inbal Weinberg, co-founder of Production Designers Collective, and her collective members, Francesca Di Mottola and Cora Pratz, are here with us to discuss their work on different films. For example, Inbal, we already had the pleasure last year talking about Pedro Almodovar's The Room Next Door. This year, Francesca Di Mottola screens The Moment in Panorama, and Cora Pratz, for the first time at Berlinale Talents, is with The Wait in Berlinale Special. So we are very happy to continue the great collaboration with you guys and happy to bring a very important craft of filmmaking, the production design, in focus today. So give it up for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Christina. We're so thrilled to be part of Berlinale Talents. Our Production Designers Collective does a workshop here annually, and we're thrilled that the Talent Campus exists, especially since the behind-the-camera crafts tend to be a bit invisible. So today we're going to take inspiration from this year's theme of Berlinale Talents and speak a little bit about what creating confusion means, especially for us production designers. And so we called our talk Controlled Chaos, and we're going to speak about a little bit about the balance between the chaos of filmmaking and the control that you need to create the worlds on screen. So I will let my wonderful colleagues introduce their films. Both Francesca Di Mottola and Cora Pratz have films here in the festival, and we're so thrilled to have them here. And they also have a film that they collaborated on that they will tell us a little bit about. So we're going to start with Francesca.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here. So I've got The Moment, which is screening tonight. And it's very exciting to be here with the movie. It's my first time at the Berlinale with a movie. The Moment is a mockumentary. It's directed by Aidan Zamiri, who has a talk after us here at 5 p.m. So he can tell you much more if you're joining that talk about the movie. And it's a mockumentary, and it follows Charlie XCX and her goodbye to the Brat era, and it's really funny, and it was a great project to be a part of. So I'm so excited that it's going to be showing here.
And we have Cora Pratz with The Wait.
Hi, my name is Cora, and we have a film here called The Wait, directed by Patrick McKinley, and it's in the 1930s in Oregon, 4 years into the Great Depression, and it's about a father who wants to get his daughter back, and he has to find some gang members to carry heavy backpacks full of gold through the wilderness. But we shot this movie in Bavaria, so that was one of the challenges, and I'm happy that this film is here, and I'm here as well. So, thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm here kind of as a moderator, but also a participant in the conversation. And I will talk about my films a little bit later, but let's hear about the film that you collaborated on.
So it's a joy to talk about this film. This film is not out yet. It's not being released. There's a trailer, and we've been allowed to share some images, which I'm really excited. And a lot of our team is here today, which is why it's also so exciting to be discussing. And of course, because we worked on it together. We shot in Cologne over 2 years. So we started in 2023. We met, in right? 2023. And then we came back for a second part, pickups, but also a second part of the concerts. That there's a image you're seeing here, which we shot in 2024, and it was an amazing movie to do together. And luckily I had Cora, who stepped in as a supervising art director, which is not her role, but she did that brilliantly, and thanks to her, I met some of you, and so it's really exciting to share some images.
Great, and this is my last film called Roofman that came out earlier this year, and we're gonna speak about all of these films. We're gonna start, however, with one of my favorite quotes about production design, said by the wonderful, legendary production designer Richard Silbert. And it is, designing a film is like painting a landscape in a hurricane. And I thought that that quote was really fitting considering our controlled chaos conversation. It is also very visually striking, and I wanted to maybe start us off on a bit of a conceptual question to ask my colleagues here what this quote means to them. What do you guys think about when we, of course, discuss what we do, but also this very strong image of us trying to paint a landscape while being blown away by a hurricane?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it sounds so wonderful. And every time I start working on a project, I also envision myself sitting in a beautiful office, like painting a landscape, and everything's, you know, in order and quiet, and I'm going to do amazing things. And then reality bites, and then, you know, like, tack, 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 this is the budget, this is the time you have, it's very low, there's confusion, there's a lot of other people's needs, and yeah, everything. But also, so that's that, but there's also an aspect of painting a landscape is like me producing art just by myself. And making a movie is not just me making art, it's about making a movie and collaborating and deadlines. We have to shoot it. I mean, imagine that when I'm doing art, it's like, okay, I know when I'm finished, and then it's an art piece. But in a movie, imagine that there's people coming to set, and I tell them, it's not ready yet. I'm sorry, but it's not ready yet. We have to continue. Come back in 2 weeks. So yeah. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
No, I relate to exactly what you're saying. I think the aspect of painting a landscape is the making of the art, but like the hurricane aspect of it, like every day can be a hurricane, and it's like I imagine when it's like the hardest times, you're in it together, everyone. But I do think about, because it's talk about designing, like as a team, as the art department, it's like you're holding tents and you're holding on to your, you know, artwork and getting through it. So that's how I feel like when I have a picture in my mind when I read that quote. That is, I think, how I feel like it's the team together holding on despite difficult moments, which we're here to talk about.
Nice. I also have that image is so strong in my head, and I feel like, one, it's the artist kind of, holding on to his casquette, you know, like trying to not be personally afflicted by the hurricane, and I think that's an important part because we're also humans and the hurricane could really get you. But also what's beautiful is that the landscape keeps changing, right? That's, to me, the hurricane, is that it keeps rearranging the landscape that you're trying to paint. So you're trying to capture it as it's rearranging itself and as it's changing. And so I think that's a kind of beautiful intro to our conversation. And I wanted to maybe start by asking you at the beginning. Let's start in the beginning when you read the script. Because Cora, I loved how you mentioned in the beginning you're kind of dreaming like how it's going to be the most perfect, we'll have the best time, we'll have the most amount of prep time and so on. However, when you actually read the script, have there been situations where you were confused? Where parts of the script were just incoherent to you, or you were questioning something about the script and you couldn't visually see it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's also what kind of confusion can there be? There can be like a confusion about what is the character actually like, what's their character, you know? And sometimes you read something, but there's a backstory that's not in the script, but that is very important for the director or the writer, but it's not there. So you kind of get confused because you focus on one little detail or how they talk or whatever, but it actually can be something else. So that is a confusion that we have to figure out. So we're all on the same page and we're creating a set or a world that feels right and supports the emotion that we actually want to feel when people watch the movie. But for me, the most difficult thing is sometimes when it gets very technical, and then there's a lot of confusion, not just for me, for everyone. How can we do this? It's like very practical, very technical. There's a script, it's confusing. So on the Wade, we had a scene that it was, they had their backpacks and they needed to cross a river, and then there's logs coming down the river, and they think they made it in time, but then it's like one of the logs gets the rope of the float with the backpack on it, and one gets dragged under a log jam, and the log jam is like somewhere else, but then Murphy gets a knife from someone and goes there and cuts him loose, but then he gets dragged under and he gets stuck, and then Anna comes, and then it's like, okay, I don't know. And then we had a storyboard, because I asked, please, can you storyboard this sequence? Because we don't know what we have to build. And yeah, but it was still kind of confusing, to be honest, so we tried to. And then Stephanie, who's here today, thank you for coming, she made some drawings, involved everyone, you know, like, okay, can this be like that? So is this what you're thinking of, and will this work? And then
can I ask, what was confusing about the storyboard, or like how would you know that certain tools are helpful for you to get the vision across?
It was just very confusing, but because we needed to shoot it in 2 days, and we knew that there's like several steps in that sequence, and so we needed to build it, but it's all on the same spot. So it was like, okay, what actually do you need? So we needed a tank also, and do we need fake logs? So it's like, because of stun and danger of making this happen. Yeah, and then we built a physical model. And this helped the most. This was the best thing to do, because then we were like, okay, with the director, with the DP, with the stunt team, with production, with the AD team, with the location team, everyone. And then we also took the model to the river, and we stood there. And so we, step by step, figured it out. And then, yeah, made a logjam in the river, stunt team and Stephanie in a wetsuit. Sorry for sharing this. And then, yeah, I think the sequence is beautiful in the movie. So, yeah, I think there's another, 2 screenshots of the movie. So, one and...
I agree with you that sometimes when you think of production design, you maybe think, oh, you know, they put some couches together. But actually, in fact, production design, the title of our position, was first given to production designer William Cameron Menzies on Gone with the Wind as a gesture, because he helped figure out the most complicated sequence in the movie, which is the burning of Atlanta, that no one could figure out, including the director. They didn't know how to shoot it. And so he did the storyboards himself, and he directed, kind of like second unit, this very complex, almost like VFX special effects unit. And so then the producers gifted him this title because it was, you're designing the production. So it's really similar to what you're talking about, is that we really help see the movie, and we spend just as much time figuring out these kind of sequences.
Yeah.
Fran, did you want to add?
How many meetings did you have? How many of those production meetings? How long did it take to go from?
Like till the very end, because the last shooting day was the tank. you know, and still we didn't have like fully figured out how to shoot the tank on the last day. So it was throughout production, on set, like shooting other stuff. Yeah.
I have a similar, I have a story of confusion that's maybe more, I would say, a reference type of confusion, or kind of trying to find out what we are talking about from the script. So I worked on Suspiria, which had a kind of supernatural element of witches, spoiler alert, and they live in a kind of underground world called the Mutta House. That's what it was called in the script, and the script was not extremely descriptive about this underworld. And so the story juxtaposes 1970s Berlin with this very strange world where the witches do their thing. And so this is directed by Luca Guadagnino. So when Luca and I started doing, sort of research on the script, it came very naturally to us. The references for the period Berlin was like amazing. I did so much research. I went to Berlin. I took photos of the wall. I had so much. It's like I felt like I knew every street in Berlin in the 1970s. But we kept avoiding the discussion of the underworld because it was really difficult to decide what it was going to look like. And we had so many references of various places, starting from fine art to historical references. And so it made us kind of understand that we are a bit stuck in how to think of something that's sort of beyond your current world of references. One of the spaces where the kind of climax of the film happens was called the Room of Feasts. And the scene itself, I'm showing you some of the kind of horrid references. The scene showcases the witches doing this kind of a horrid ritual that involves sort of blood sacrifice. And so I'm just showing you the world of the gamut of our references. It was from like, obviously, like master paintings like Hieronymus Bosch and Goya, but also surreal photography and 1970s female experimental art. And so we really went so far, and we're trying to figure out how to bring it all in. And that's sort of a moment of confusion that arose from the script, but it was just our experimental thinking. And so we slowly got to looking at, we're very attached to contemporary female artists who do sort of experimental spatial work, and we saw the works of a Japanese artist by the name of Shiharu Shiota. And she does a lot of work with threads, and we just started looking at her art so much, and we also saw a lot of her work that she did with textiles and especially women's dresses. We all fell in love with her work, including the costume designer, and we decided to take kind of references from her work, especially her dresses. So we ended up making these 3 huge dresses, which kind of corresponded with our story, that were based on one of her pieces, and we had them made and hung them in our large space, just kind of how the inspiration came to us. And while we were working on that, we're trying to find some very strange texture to cover the walls with, and we were inspired by her thread work, but we were just brainstorming. And one day Luca was in the art department. We're all trying to think what would be the right thing, and we looked at all of our references. We had references of very strange Victorian hair that we had pulled, the costume designer pulled them, and then I had some pretty harsh Holocaust references, saying I'm Jewish, and that was what I was thinking about when we were thinking of blood sacrifice. And we were like, what about hair? And so we ended up getting, I think, all the boxes in Italy of hemp thread, which you can see on the right side. This is, as we were making our set, that is the gigantic pile of hemp hair that we had in the middle, and we threaded it through our walls. Anyway, so I'm I'm telling this wild story because it's about how inspiration finds itself, and from kind of confusion to like the final set, which you can see here, and you can see kind of the hair even behind the dresses, and this is a very dark image from the actual movie. Yeah, so okay, I'll leave this image on just for everybody's enjoyment. Do you guys have, this is us speaking about maybe confusion that arises from the original kind of text, but what happens when, you know, best laid plans, everything has already gotten figured out, we're on our way, and then something happens, which is every day in production, of course. But that somehow, do you have an example of a set that arose from some moment of confusion and chaos beyond anyone's control?
A lot. I mean, there's a really high percentage of sets that arose from a state of chaos. Like, yeah. But for me, there's one, there was like a really big chaos because COVID came, you know? We were starting to prep a movie in winter. We found almost all the locations. We were set. And then COVID hit. And we paused, and then we started again in summer, and but we wanted to shoot, like, the main location was an apartment on the 12th floor in an apartment building in Berlin. It was, yeah, from I'm Your Man, and I think it was 16 shooting days or something, and they figured out it's impossible with all the regulations and health issues and whatever, and using the elevators is impossible. So, oh yeah, 8 weeks out, they said, no, we can't shoot there, but we give you the money to build it on stage. So that's great. It was just like, this was the location we wanted to shoot in. And so, yeah, that's great, but I didn't have enough time. I got the money, but just for the stage build. I didn't have an art director. I didn't have, like, enough team. Also, the set deck team was not prepared to dress a full set. So the team stayed the team, and we had, I think, 6 weeks then in the end. And so I had, like, a few days after I did my first drawing, we started building, and I would sit down with the construction manager and say, okay, what do you need first? What do you need second? And I'm gonna work like that. And sometimes they called me, I was in the office, and you have to decide about the windows. We have to draw the windows. Okay, I'm gonna come down. I would draw on wood. And so the chaos produced more chaos for us, but it was also cool because I didn't want to just, build the same as it was in real life, because building it on stage is a great opportunity to make a nicer set, to make, I don't know, one that is a lot more interesting for the camera, and, so it was cool. It was a lot of fun, but it was a new kind of chaos then. So, yeah, and also, yeah, we had to make a picture because we really wanted to have the same view. The view was amazing, and so we also had to produce a backdrop, and that was very tight, like having it made. And yeah, but I think it worked pretty well, and colleagues ask me, oh, you shot this movie in Berlin. Where's this apartment? Where did you shoot it? Because it was a tiny movie. We had a small budget. Nobody expected us to build this apartment on a stage, so. Yeah. But I'm glad we did.
Yeah, when you asked me that question, I was like, okay, I mean, every single movie has a location that falls through at the last minute. There's not one I've done that hasn't had that. And so from the moment I wanted to show, so the moment was like the sort of swiftest prep until it wasn't. So we prepped in, I shouldn't say that, but we did. We prepped in 3.5 weeks. I started in Berlin. I was here, I was part of a talents workshop last year, but I was also working and looking at locations. I landed in London, we started scouting, and every location was like hitting the mark. And I was like, who's this genius location scout? And I was like, yes. So everything just flowed really well until it didn't. So 3 days before shooting, what was meant to be Atlantic Records office. We lost the location because they finally read the script and they realized the material didn't go with, what their corporate whatever represented. So there was no chance of getting it back, lots of conversations going, and I then was taken to see other 6 offices in the morning, one after the other, and they were never right. And there was the one, if we can show the slide, there was nothing a lot of the moment plays on seeing through into big views, but also reflections, so seeing the city reflected on glass, but also shooting through screens and shooting into a room, but staying with camera outside a glass separation. So it doesn't show the whole scope of the location, didn't have great pictures, but it kind of shows the view. And then, it was like a huge room that you could just shoot through all this glass into this one room. So, this is just a simple okay, what do we do in 3 days? Let's build. Oh no, we don't have the time, obviously. We also didn't have the money. And so I sort of just in a panic look around and I'm like, oh my God, let's do it in our offices. And so we just recreated I think the second. And again, this is there's all this, this is the one meeting room, but there's the huge office. So Set Deck did a huge job in dressing this whole office space, and that was done in literally a day.
What did you do with your actual production folks that work in the office?
They moved out of the way, quick. And it's like, no, but where are we going? And then that became a trend in the movie, because once this location fell through, everything was falling through. We needed airport, like a private jet airport. We couldn't get one close enough, whatever. So we did it in the lobby. This is new studios outside London, so they're very new. They look quite corporate. So the look was really good for us, it worked for us. So again, the airport lobby then was in the lobby of the thing. And then costume were very friendly and moved into trailers, and we used their offices as fitting room, and it just became a thing. So I have to thank the whole production. But this is a very, it's a tight, but I did want to talk about Mother Mary, which is a movie the one I was talking about that we did together, directed by David Lowery. And I can, whilst talking about this movie, reply to other of your questions too, because, well, not really, but tie in with what you were saying about when you get a script and you read, and I'd seen David's movies and I loved his work, so I'm reading this and I'm having all these pictures in my head, and then it's this and that and the other, and then I fly to Cologne. I live in London, and I was like, okay, I meet Cora, we start talking about the movie. I fly to Cologne and I meet Andrew, who's the DOP, who's here, and these images start obviously going into my research and lookbooks, and we start discussing, and then I don't know, we just couldn't find locations. But also one thing
also
that...
no studio space.
Yeah, the first thing about this movie that I discussed with the director is that 70% of the movie takes place in one location, which is a barn, a big barn, stables. And so the first thing that we actually agreed on the approach was we need to build that. And David was like, yeah, we need to build that. Of course we need to build that. And unfortunately, this is not the set build. This is kind of the set build we had in mind, but there was talks about, we need to build it, and we need the roof to come off so that we can fly a camera in, and this and that, and I was like, yes, amazing, we've got 12 weeks, I don't know how we're going to do it. I started drawing, literally technical drawings and then I arrived already in Cologne with some technical drawings to start discussing, and then we find out that we didn't have stages, or we had stages, we had a stage for 5 weeks, prep, and tiny.
And also, it was not high enough.
It was
really,
the footprint was not big enough.
We thought we can get the big studio, but it wasn't booked for us.
So that was the first difficulty that we came across. And so I took the courage to say that I'm afraid that our dream of being in this sort of controlled environment that we can curate and, you know, we can design to the extreme detail might not just be there, and we need to find it. And so that was like search for the existing barn. And I mean, we saw quite a few, but we came across this, and David and Andrew had discussed about the walls being much darker than what we then ended up with. Like, they wanted a really sort of, like, yeah, sort of moody and darker look for it. But I think what we found, actually, the reason why I'm talking about this movie is that I think with your question you were asking, when you were in a tricky sort of chaotic situation and you had to find a solution to it, was like what you ended up a better solution. And I think with this movie, I can say, like, personally, every single set for me is so much better than that first idea that I had in mind when I read the script.
Yeah.
And you
also,
feel the same?
Because we didn't build the barn, we were able to build other sets that were supposed to be on location. And I think it turned like, I think 6 weeks or a few weeks after we started prepping, the whole script changed and the whole approach changed. Like, how to do this. It was a hotel shot on location, but we couldn't find it. It was an airport.
There was
not
an airport,
existed anywhere.
jets again,
Jets.
dressing rooms.
Yeah, like a lot of on-location locations. So, and so, but then we still had some stages, smaller ones. So, yeah, we could.
I'd love to go back to the previous image, because one thing I'd like to say, which I think was an amazing surprise for us, is that I was worried about this location. We loved the size and the scale of it and the height, but I was like, what about these beams? There's like 4 sets of beams, which actually create the central stage, which was so great for us. But I was like, this might be complicated to shoot through the beams, like, oh, it's going to be in the way. And then David and Andrew was like, no, that's actually great to have those beams. And then the beams themselves became the anchor for the whole design of the movie. They kept coming back. And so I always sort of think about these beams metaphorically as the actual sort of architectural, structural element that kept the movie together and got us out of chaos. Like, it's a weird sort of poetic thing that I associate, but they come back, and they come back. I think we can, sorry if you don't mind clicking, this is a set build, which again, like, when we sort of went through, I think, towards the more sort of theatrical approach, then it was so liberating. And so this was a 360 mirrored room, which we could also shoot through. This is the hotel suite, and you're not seeing, like, I mean, this is how part of, like, you see it in the movie also, so it's not, you're not seeing outside of the set. This is how you approach the set. So suddenly you're seeing 3 walls, and again, the scale, because then, like, the height of the barn also dictated the scale of some sets. So it sort of all started coming together.
So you're saying that you were forced into actually more creative process because of all of
Absolutely.
these. And what would you say that that's something that you, maybe from that experience or in general, you welcome? That, because such a big question for us, do you create in chaos? Is the entire process of creativity, is that chaotic? Or is that necessary? Like, if we're too ordered, do we lose some of the kind of meandering process of creativity?
I mean, I tend to say that I gravitate towards very chaotic projects. So I often ask myself, is it me? What have I done wrong? Do I not know? But I mean, this one was incredibly chaotic for all sorts of reasons. But the outcome, because I feel like it really works, I'm so happy with it, then I'm so much more happy. I do, however, not always need that kind of chaos. I'm fine with, like, so the moment was an example of, like, where everything was fitting, and then, yes, there were, like, hiccups. And that's quite normal, but, like, it was amazing. Like, the director had such a clear vision, and also very visual ideas about, like, little details that he wanted in the props and whatever. So it just make it all very like quick to react to. Of course, it's also like a period movie, so you're looking for locations that exist. But it felt very good to be working in that way, especially when you have 3 weeks and a half to prep. So. This is, again, the beams are back, and this is just to illustrate, this is supposed to be the backstage of a concert, so in an arena, and the beams became, again, like the sort of key element and part of the visual language of the movie. And this shows the models. Oh.
So yeah, to kind of, to explore what we were speaking about with the madness of creativity, and if it's helpful to keep a little bit of wild meandering in the creative process, and can you actually do that? Because we work in these hurricane type environments. How do you manage to lose control without losing control? So just wondering about, each of ours creative exploration process, which part of the brain do we rely on most?
So this is a different movie that I worked on last year, and it premiered in Sundance, so it hasn't been widely seen, so I can't really share pictures of the set so much, but I do share pictures of the process, because I tend to collect, I think, too many images whilst I'm researching, and I go through a process of, it's art madness, totally. I do get lost, and I have to constantly keep checking in with myself. And The Gallerist is a movie about somehow ruthless contemporary art gallerist who's setting up a show, and it was entirely set, or 95% set, inside a gallery space, which we decided very early on with the director and the DP that it would be a white space. So we embraced that, but I struggled with that idea so much because I'm scared of the sort of empty white space. And so, again, it was something that we designed really quickly, and in a total hurricane. That whole movie, the whole prep was a process of hurricane because of the lack of time. So I was drawing and producing technical drawings with the art department whilst they were building, and that was going on through the whole time until the last minute. We were also creating the artwork for this fictional character. So it was all a very sort of instinctive way of designing, but I could not rest with the fact that most of the film was in a white space. And so we had a few other spaces. This gallery is set in Miami, and the story is set during Miami Basel. And so because of Miami being so colorful, we figured that we could have other rooms that were attached to the gallery that were colored. So there's a very colored bathroom, and there's a very colored office, and then there's a very colorful storage, and then the world outside is Miami, Little Haiti, and it's super colorful. So I sort of, in my process of looking for those tones and the different spaces, I went a bit mad collecting, and then I sort of had to.
These are images of the art that is supposed to be. What exactly these?
These images are both references of spaces and architecture, but also this is just one of the walls in my office. But there's another really long wall, which was just art references and so. I mean, I'm sharing this because it's I think it sort of relates to the title of this chat, which is Controlled Chaos, because in my mind, this is so chaotic, and I've got it's all in different levels. So the fact of putting them on paper and, ordering the colors and creating a palette to look at least was really helpful. And then it also helped zone into the key references. So I was actually sort of doing it by selecting some of the images and being with the director, okay, we really like this yellow here, let's find this tone and whatever. So it was just to illustrate a process, and I find myself that I do that a lot, wallpapering my office, and it just really helps me in terms of the control chaos. And I have one image only that I'm sharing of this from this movie, from the artwork that we created from the movie, which is, I think, the next slide, which is, I think it ties in with the poster of this event with the wiggly thing. So this is the result of all this research. It's one of the results, one of the many artworks, but I think it felt like it tied in with what we're talking about, the confusion.
Cora, what about you? Do you go through this process of collecting and thinking through and then trying to order it?
Yeah, I do as well, but I also, when I thought about, like, how am I actually going to do it? I think I have a strong tendency to balance things out. So I don't like it too quiet. It might, I don't know, it gets boring. So I might add a little chaos myself to the process when it's too quiet. And then, because it's never going to be like a straight way to reaching your goals, like creating a beautiful set or a right set is not just, okay, I'm here, I'm thinking of it, drawing it, and that's it. Please make it. So there needs to be, I don't know, some energy from the side, from ups and downs. And so I'm also looking for chaos sometimes, to be honest, to just get other influences. And then I don't know, I can still decide. It's not losing control so that I'm giving like away. I can't do it, so please, whatever. I still, I take this and that, and there's a lot going on, but this is what I need, and this is what I need, and that's great, I think, by choosing also what happens, because a lot of things happen unplanned or by mistake, and you can still, they're amazing, and I don't think that I'm a brilliant genius, like I can come up with anything just by myself, so I need collaborators, I need, I don't know, a lot of influences to get somewhere. But sometimes when the chaos is like taking over and everything, I don't know, hell breaks loose and there's just, I don't know, pure confusion everywhere. I think I become very quiet and try to find a distance to everything that happens and try to focus and prioritize, and then I get really, okay. How do we get there? How much time do we have? And what is possible? What is doable? So I think, yeah, that's my way of sometimes this and sometimes that, yeah.
Yeah. For me, I feel like, just to kind of bring up another point of view to sort of counter both of you, I think that sometimes for me, when I read a script or when I, start the design process, I feel like maybe, and it's because I started an indie film and like basically like driving the cube truck and like dumpster diving, I find that sometimes I immediately start thinking of the practical aspects of designing the set or the whole film, and I kind of immediately can see the inside of it, like how many people is it going to take, what is really complicated, is this material available, and I have to be cognizant not to let those questions take over and give the time to that sort of willful moment of believing everything is possible before settling for, the reality. So that occurred to me over the years, and I think it is a helpful mechanism because it checks you from going too far, but it also can hinder you from thinking larger, so that's a really interesting balance. And another thing I was thinking about as I'm listening to you is that I think as we all have to be very strong visual communicators, not just to explain the film to ourselves or our department, but to explain it to everyone else in the film world, in our production, I've become kind of astute to miscommunication when it happens, even when other people, like I can read a meeting and be like, the special effects coordinator is not understanding what the AD is saying, right? Because like you have to pick up on these things. And so a lot of times I feel like the art department could help facilitate the diminishing of confusion across the board, because we tend to be the ones that see it the clearest. So yeah, I thought that was also kind of an interesting point. And I believe, Francesca, you mentioned when you were speaking about your artistic process that you also rely a lot on your art department to support you in that. So I feel like us all speaking about collaboration and the other members of either production or our department, that's a part of how you control your chaos.
Absolutely. I mean, to begin with, I didn't manage to do all those mood boards by myself, so I always start them, and then it's like, in that case, it was so chaotic, so I found someone that was up for, helping me, and they didn't like me after a bit, I think, and then they didn't talk to me for a few days, and then it sort of went back to fine, but yeah, it was a lot, and they kept on saying, do you really need that image also? I was like, yeah, I think so, please, so yeah. And even now I'm sort of starting prep on something, and the confusion is not references. I've actually, that's all really well organized, but we're sort of searching for the right country to where the film can be set, or countries, and so there's a lot of locations that I'm going through, and so I'm having to do the same boards to sort of see actually, like, location by location, what a country can offer, and just like to sort of try and control some chaos that will inevitably come our way at some point, but it's just like trying to start ahead.
Well, okay, so you're talking about starting, but let's jump to the sort of the end, the result. And I sometimes ask myself, when you view the final product, when you're in the screening room, or are there sets that you think were kind of visually confused? Or, I mean, I'm not going to use the word visual failure because we don't believe in failure, but that something was off about the set once. You may not have caught it in the moment, maybe you were hesitant, but then you can actually see that not working. So yeah, anybody wants to take that?
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, I mean, in one project, I even realized, I mean, maybe a little after with some delay, but I fell in love, we scouted, and it was for the TV series Perfume, and everything was kind of stylized and also a bit retro, so it was not wrong to choose a house that was old, but it was like a late 50s, beautiful mid-century, German mid-century house, and we fell in love with it, and I fell in love with it, but I kind of got confused because I liked it so much, and then everything felt so difficult. And we were looking, like, finding the right wallpaper, the right colors, because it was so well preserved. It has an original bathroom. It has the original kitchen. It had a beautiful booth in the living room. The old windows, everything was so well preserved, and we loved it. But then it was a family, it was a contemporary thing, like a family with the kid, and she was, hi, Michael. And everything was so difficult, also for the set deck team, like finding the right furniture to match this old house, and I don't know, it was just the wrong choice, and I was confused by choosing it. I was just blinded by it because it was great looking, but it was just, they were not really living there. It was really difficult. So, yeah.
I think it looks great, though.
Yeah, but not right, sometimes. Yeah.
I put this title, so this is one of the non-white rooms that we designed for the galleries, and it's a pink bathroom, and I just saw the film very recently, 2 weeks ago, and I do love the bathroom, but I think it's too big. And so I felt like I wanted to talk about this because we had, again, like it was quite short, the prep on that, very short, and the design was so instinctive, and we had models, we had 3D models, and this one bathroom has a lot of action in it and a lot of complicated camera work in it, and a mirror has to open up, and there's a lot of like tricks that happen. And so we found ourselves, when the set was drawn out on the floor, and I was standing in this bathroom space with the director, the DOP, some producers were there. There was a lot of people in this bathroom, and everyone was shocked at how small it was. And so they were like, you need to make it bigger. And so we started collecting pieces of wood and being like, okay, like this bigger? Or no, God, no, like way bigger, way bigger. And there's one image of it, and it obviously doesn't, I find it gigantic. It's big. It's big. You can see it. I mean, it's a wide angle. Okay, the picture. But it's super cool. I love it. I'm not complaining. Like, I love that it's colorful and the color is there, but I felt it was really hard to dress, and my instinct, I just didn't have time to fight for my opinion. And so when I watched the film, I was like, I love it, but, I wish the bathroom was smaller. That was the feeling.
So interesting, because we really seem to feel it in our bones when something is not working. And a question I've been asking myself the last few years is, would you ever purposefully create a confused set on screen, or a kind of visual confusion? In what situations does that happen? And what are the different angles that could take, like a disharmonious visual experience? So I'm wondering if we can all share our thoughts on that.
Don't remember if there's a slide coming.
It's Cora.
It's me. Yeah, but this was a beautiful exercise because it's a black and white movie, and it's about 9/11 and the couple moving to London. And it's always like art. It includes a lot of art because two of the protagonists are artists, and but the art gets interrupted by 9/11 happening, so in an exhibition, they turn off the art, and then the news are showing on a lot of monitors, and everybody's shocked and watching that. And later on in the story, they move, and she, also an artist, gets really confused, and she's lost in her new home and everything. So she starts drawing on the walls and everything. So we had the art then, intruding kind of in the real world. And also we projected some of the art on her face. And so it was really a nice mixture of real life and set design, and also the art that's in the movie, like seeing differently. And so that's, in a good way, kind of confusing, I think.
Was it an interesting process for you to create those sets? Was it different than usual? Because you knew you had this sort of creative liberty to be in a confused state of mind?
Yeah, it was more about the art, and I worked together with two amazing artists because we had two artists in the story. So one was doing the art for Isabel, and the other one was doing the video art for Andras, and so we included them also later in the shoot, and we had them doing their stuff when we shot the movie. So like this projection on her face is also, we had the artist when we shot this, and we were like making art in the movie. But the story with the set build was like the same with the bathroom. We were confused about the size. I wanted to build it smaller. It's way too big. But yeah.
I wanted to speak a little bit about working with Pedro Almodovar, which I was very honored to do on one of my last films. And I learned such great lessons from working with him because he's obviously known for his own, I call it the Almodovar universe, his own way of thinking through color and pattern and furniture and interior design in general. And so the process of working with him was really unusual for me especially, and kind of fits this question about like making a confusing set. So I'm going to share a little bit about my kind of process working with Pedro. So I realized while working with him how rationally I think when I come up with ideas for sets, and that usually I kind of analyze real life and I make my design decisions based on that. So our two main protagonists were living in New York City. One was a war correspondent and one was a novelist. They were sort of from an artist milieu, and were kind of bohemian, had bohemian lifestyles, and were in their maybe mid-50s, 60s. So, you know, for me, this is the set that we had to build for the main character. I'm just showing you the space so you see, okay, we had to build this apartment from scratch. We had a lot of great references in New York. And I sort of felt like my place was to keep the real in the Pedro movie, especially that he's, for the first time, making a film in New York and about New York. And he's a bit out of his own comfort zone, which he shared with me. And he said, like, I'm putting my trust in you because you've lived in New York for many years. This is your world. You know these people. And so I took that very seriously. And I took Pedro around New York, had him meet artists and war correspondents. We went to their homes. I showed him all these pictures. I had all these books about New York artists and so on. And my references were sort of in this universe of like homes, maybe a little bit more elevated, of people, either well-known artists in New York or people that I know. And we went, and as I said, we got a lot of reference photos from real artists and real correspondence and so on. So I was constantly, there were many, many, many such images, and I was trying to get a bit more stylized because it's Pedro and bringing more color in, but at the end of the day, like, it's New York. There's only so far sort of you could go because it's a gritty city and it has its own palette. So this is kind of my universe that I was working in. I'm sharing all this stuff with Pedro. He also loves looking at design magazines and look at references. We had hundreds of meetings about like this kind of stuff. Then we end up with a very interesting mix of stuff from the hundreds of meetings that we had, which I like actually don't understand Pedro's mind, and that's kind of the beauty of it. And so we had so many references. We just keep bringing him stuff, and then we choose together. But often it's just hard to know why we choose certain things. And I was trying so hard to kind of rationalize things to myself. And after a while, you kind of had to let go of the rationale. So I'm just, you know, I had a hand in a lot of the picking. It's not like I was not there, but it just, the mix of it is what was so kind of hard for me to figure out. Is like, why are we mixing a Gaudí style chair with like a banana bowl of fruit and like, you know, Moroccan rug? And oh, there's a little image with actually Pedro's hand showcasing like one of the Mexican like trinkets in his house that we took from his house. It's like, and it was just this kind of like meandering process of sharing so many different references and images and samples. So I'm showing you, this is us in a meeting on set with, usually the meetings are with like a large team of like, everybody makes decisions together. That's Pedro at the table. And we're showing him thousands of samples of things. And on the other side is like our set in progress, which is many of the meetings we've had were on set with Pedro. And we're just showing him all of these options, like 300 samples of fabrics that we can upholster the couch in. And I'd be like, to my own set deck team, I'm like, look guys, like, can we curate a little bit? Can we just show maybe 250 samples of colors and just take out the ones I don't love? And then they would magically appear back on the table. And it would just be like this really interesting process that I didn't know how to deal with. At times, I managed to like squeeze a lot, you know, like sneak in a lot of my own suggestions. But my moment of almost like, you know, breaking down was when we were trying to test the couch colors, because the couch is white, and we were having all these fabrics. And so in the end, Pedro was like, okay, yeah, let's upholster it in this electric blue with red piping. And I just like had to walk away and sat in my room, tried to embrace it. I was like, how could this woman have a blue couch with red piping? I just can't. It's just, I don't believe it. And I even, I went to the head producer, Esther Garcia, who's like his right-hand woman, has been there for 40 years, and they make all decisions together. I'm like, Esther, I'm getting worried about the set because we're going to be shooting in New York City. Like, Tilda Swinton's going to be walking down Fifth Avenue, and then she's going to enter our stage set, and it's going to be a Pedro, is it going to be too jarring? Are people going to be out of the movie? Are they going to believe this blue couch? And Esther was like, look, if you're very concerned, you should really speak to Pedro. And I was like, that's easy to say. I was like, how can I explain it to him? So I got to a point where I was like, I just have to accept it myself, and I have to think about, is it actually possible in the universe, in any universe? And I thought back on a story that I love from the history also of production design. It's in a book, I think, by Henry Bumstead, who's a very well-known old, legendary designer. And he was talking about his first days in the studio system when he was like an assistant art director. Everyone's drawing, and he had to design his first bar in Hanoi or something for a Hollywood movie in the 40s. And he did all this research, and he looked at all these images, and he built this set. Then somebody came on set to visit, and it was, I think, some army general who was stationed there, and he came to talk to Bumstead, and he said, I was stationed in Hanoi for 10 years, and I'd never seen a bar like this. And so Bumstead was so upset. It was his first set. He was so proud of it, and he went and spoke to the head art director of the studio, which at the time was a very, very important person. I think it was Hans Dreyer. Really dejected, and Hans Dreyer told him, you know what? That army general didn't know, but that bar was just around the corner. And I think about that story a lot because I think it's so helpful to just open the imagination and think could it be there? And so I tried to do the same with my New York wanderings, and I said to myself, well, New York has 9 million people. One person probably has a blue couch with red piping. And I just went with that. And obviously it's a Pedro movie, so you have to trust, and you just kind of have to say, it's going to work itself out because this is the universe he's created, and it's his universe. And so I just wanted to show you one of the images from the final film, and to say, it is what it was always going to be. And Pedro just does it his way. And so after that film, I really thought deeply and still think a lot about how we can scramble our own patterns of thinking and how we can be maybe a little less rational when we design, and how to make disharmonious decisions on a natural basis. So I think that's a really, really interesting interesting discussion, and hopefully for all of us to try. But
I'm up for it.
Send it to you.
Great story. Thank you.
Great.
Love it. So I'm going back in time a bit. I'm talking about the last set that I designed for a TV series, which I had designed 3 seasons of, and this was the last opportunity to create a new set on stage, and I'd found by then a visual language for the show, which was, I think, maybe tying in with your first question, if you misunderstand or you don't get something about a script or a brief, when you'll see the pictures, I understand that. I mean, I look at this work and it's I totally did not understand the brief, or didn't connect to the initial brief, which was this is the series takes, it's Catherine the Great, so it's 18th century, and palaces in Russia that Catherine built. It's not very faithful to history, and very non-faithful to history in many ways, but which was very liberating in terms of design. But part of the brief, when I met with the writer and the showrunner and the creative producer, was we want this to be elegant, and we really believe in the less is more. So, pared down sets where the story and the characters can, come through. And I was like, oh God, I don't know that I know how to do this. I'm not seeing it for this. It's not what I'm seeing. And so I slowly, started those mood boards that you've seen before for the galleries. Those were all around the art department, like loads of palaces from all over the world. And that was a first sort of like Lego of images that since the beginning. And sort of and they'd come into our offices and wouldn't complain about how much there was on those walls and in the drawings and obviously in the concept drawings. So then we went with it, and my motto became like more is more, like nothing of this, less is more, let it go, like whatever. And so we found the language of the more is more for the sets, and then I was like, okay, this is the last set, I'm gonna go full on. And so about creating like this harmony, I was like, how far can I go before it becomes really gross? And like, can I try it? And I'm seeing these pictures and I'm like, oh my God, how much gold? Like, and I do find it a bit gross, but mainly because this one room has like 45 pilasters. It's a huge bedroom. And the actual design of the pilasters, I tried to combine the ugliest, like existing vacuum formed sort of moldings that I've throughout the whole season was like, please, I can't see that catalog in here. This is horrible. Who uses that? Like, we can't. Let's not. And then I was like, with my team by then, and I worked with a lot of them for the very season. So I was like, why don't we just get those catalogs and start playing around like it's our last chance? And so we had, sorry, can you go back one image? Because basically, if you see the pilaster, like all these bits and bobs, they come as single pieces. So we were like the Baroque Lego, we were trying them on the floor. And then it really took quite a while. And then we had to sort of build bits and bobs. But then we found, and then we started casting and replicating. And so the process of this was really long. And that was my experience of creating this harmony. And I think I actually am quite pleased at the end with the result. And this is just showing a few other sets of previous seasons of the more is more and the builds and the amount of like detail that went into it, and sample marbles on walls, and yeah, it was a bit extreme. So to go from that to the white walls of the galleries, I think I can, maybe make a point of why I was so scared of the white walls. That's
Beautiful. Okay, I think this is an opportunity for us to open it up to questions from the audience. I believe we have 2 mics going around, so if you guys want to just raise your hands with questions, somebody will come over, and we'll wait until the mic gets to you to ask the question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kislev from India. Thank you so much. It was really lovely to listen to all of you, and it really opened our mind in terms of what is possible and not possible. Actually, my question is to all of you. I come from, say, independent filmmaking space, and often we don't have the money to, say, create sets, but production design is also sometimes even with real locations, you need to design that space because, it's not that because it's real, it fits your vision. And even then you have to change certain things. So, I will want to know how do you do that? When you have a real space, but it's not exactly fitting in. And sometimes real space can have its own hegemony of being too real. And everybody goes like, oh, but it's real, and you take it for granted. But sometimes, no, you only want 60% of it. So then how does that creativity come in? My second question is about what philosophy or logic you follow while dressing up a space, because sometimes, especially with this, sometimes you see that, you dress it up so well, but the character is saying the same thing, the space is saying the same thing, the sound is saying the same thing, and it's like you followed the director's logic and, everything was saying the same thing, and it becomes too much. So then how do you remove things, or how do you imagine the sound of it or things of it? And the second question related with that is, film is a temporal medium. So often when we see references, we see the still photographs. But time happens, people change, and they change space with them, and spaces bear their presence. So then how do you, with filling up, how do you imagine temporality, Say of an apartment where people have lived for a year, and we see them in the beginning of the year and the end of the year. Because big time is easy to depict, but small times are very hard, so.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Well, a lot of questions in one. I'm
Great
sure
questions, actually. Thank you.
Yeah. We can pick and choose and answer various. I can say for working on location, which maybe can relate to confusion, because I kind of feel like what's beautiful about a location is sometimes we come across places where we could never invent them. You're just like, how did the person make the decision to put the light switch here? Or like, why is there a beam right in the middle? And so those sort of confused moments actually end up being, as Francesca's story, inspiring. And so I think part of it is kind of accepting the space and not fighting it, knowing what it can give you and that what can be changed in it. So really kind of thinking of the space for recognizing the charm of it when it's helpful. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the same. I also shoot a lot on locations, and also, I also go scouting when I know I'm going to build something on stage. I really scout for places, also for inspiration, and sometimes the limitations that you have on a on-location set is amazing, and you can recreate it on stage, but of course, then you can have flying walls and make it easier for the camera. But sometimes these things that you would never have done when you, I don't know, draw it on paper. So I also enjoy working on location, and but of course, you have to take some stuff away and add something else to make it your own, so that we go somewhere and it's ready. That never happens. So sometimes also we have to fight for the chance and the budget and the time to do so. Yeah, but that's very important. So yeah, communicating about, okay, this is great, but it's not a set yet. There's other people living here. It's not our characters, it's someone else. So we have to make it ours. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I think I really, really enjoy building sets and the whole process that goes with it, like thinking about it, obviously like researching real locations. But of course, there's like no way that you're going to get as much detail and character like when you find the perfect location. So that's also just such an exciting moment. However, yeah, I think my trouble with location, because I've had so much trouble with location in my life, is like doing period films or series or whatever. Like, it's obviously, you're often in very precious locations where you're not allowed to touch anything. So I'm always so scared of coming up with like cover-ups that look fake and how to, so that's a big struggle, like to getting, like, that becomes an extreme focus of mine, is like how to find a location where you can work and you are allowed to work, and be it a palace, which is now a museum, where you're working with restorers and no, you can't touch this, don't look at that, please don't even go close to that. So it's like always that fight, or like actually taking over someone else's house and asking them to move. So it's very stressful, I find, but yeah, I think you will know as like the sort of the person who's helping the director and the production create the world when something is right and you stumble across it and it's worth fighting for. So yeah, I think it's finding I mean, obviously the hope is to find a location that gives you a lot already to work with, or else it's kind of defies the purpose. The second and the third, the second question about when everything is the same, sound, I mean, that can be a choice. So I think it then also really stems from the creative collaboration, like what the director has in mind, and the filmmakers, like, we want to make sure that we get that emotion, that mood through the sets and the worlds you're creating and the sound design. And sometimes, I don't know, really it's so like case dependent and project dependent. And how do you change? on the go. If something, I mean, it's difficult with sound design because we often don't, like the thing with what we do, sometimes it's so early on, so we collaborate quite closely in the best situations with the costume designer and with the director of photography and it's like we don't know yet how the editor is going to approach something unless there is like a storyboard or, you know, like you have conversations or what the sound is going to do. Like there's, I guess, some projects where there's playlists. A director has shared a playlist or can tell you about what they're thinking about sound, and that's like amazing. And then you can know, like, okay, why don't we do this? You know. But.
I think it's very helpful to speak to your collaborators on set to know if things are working while you're seeing it through the camera lens, you know? And there could definitely be last-minute decisions because you really don't know until all the elements come together. Obviously, the lighting, the framing, blocking, and so on, the costumes. And it does happen that, for sure, it's happened to me that the main actress walked in a dress exactly the same color as my wall, even though we've discussed it. And it's just things like that happen. So I think taking the moment to actually say to yourself, okay, I know we're here, I know we're supposed to start shooting any moment, but like, perhaps there needs to be a change in order to create more contrast or to make one thing not line up, a little bit like we were talking about the disharmonious set. But the hard thing is to say in the moment, hey, everyone, like, I feel like we need to make a change, or go up to the director of photography and say, what do you think about this? Or go to the costume designer and say, I think we're going to have an issue here. So taking the time, which in the moment seems like impossible because the stress on set is such high-level stress, and just to be like, time out. This set maybe needs a bit of zhuzhing, right? And then there was a question about temporality, like how do you show the passage of time?
I love thinking about that. I love thinking about that quite obsessively.
So many spreadsheets.
Yeah, because I mean, I really enjoy like the details and props, and it's just like finding those moments, because obviously you're not very rarely shooting in order of stories, so you know you're going back and forward. So it's finding those moments and making sure you're on board with all your team and the prop master and the standby props, and you know, like, oh, can you make sure that when that and I'm very rarely on set. I wish I was much more, but I can't. And like, 'cause often we're prepping at the set. So those details then are really up to your collaborators. So as long as you've sort of thought about it, and I know there's, yeah.
Yeah, I had, like, on one of the first movies I did, like, we were shooting for 1 week in the same office. And then it was a Saturday, and I said, oh, do you need me on set? And then, no, I was home, and then the director called me, and I was panicking, and he was like, do you have a plan for how we're going to show that time is passing? Because we're shooting here now for 5 days in a row. But obviously, this office changes. What is your plan? Because nobody knows. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to talk to them. And then I was like, okay. And we had a lot of more stuff, so we thought, okay, this scene, and then I looked at the schedule, and I was sending them, okay, put some stuff here for this scene, and put some stuff there for that scene, and it's getting more and more and more and more and more. So, yeah, but that was like, okay, yeah, I have to think about, if you're going back to one location, you have 5 shooting days, but it's throughout the whole movie, and we have like, there's 1 year passing by, so something happens. It's not just a finished set. Yeah.
And then it goes back to a year before.
Yeah, exactly, and it's going back and forth, yeah.
Yeah, I had a really I kind of am like a stickler for that, because I feel actually that's where the control comes in controlled chaos, because you really have to be prepared. On my last film, on Roofman, we had to build a gigantic Toys R Us from the early 2000s. And we also had to show it through 6 months. And, you know, it's a store. It's all about branding for specific events. So we had back to school, then we had Thanksgiving, then we had Christmas, and we had Halloween. So we had 5 instances where so much of the actual branding of the store had to change alongside like the items, which was it's kind of like a small film. So it was a huge, huge challenge to the art department. So I went through all the lines of the schedule to like triple check and be like, hey, this is Halloween, this is gonna have to be, because it's not written necessarily in every schedule line. And so I sat down with the AD and was like, I'm not sure we can shoot this scene on this day, because we'd have to have our art department change everything for Halloween and then change everything for, so it was definitely a collaboration with the AD department, and we had to actually shift some of the scenes in order to fit everything. So that's where actually I am super organized, and I check with my team a million times, like, hey, do we have a plan to shift this while we're doing, through the day, sometimes you have to change. So I think that really helps put some structure into it. Anyway, next question. Somebody maybe from this side over here, 1 second. Find the mic to you over here. Sorry.
Thank you. I also would like to ask something, probably hijacking two questions at the same time. First, as a screenwriter, after listening to Cora, as a screenwriter, how detailed would you like us to be? I mean, sometimes I do it and people say that I am micromanaging, but after listening to Cora, I think probably sometimes. And second, very precise for the three of you too, have you ever seen a film and you think you wished I should have designed, decorated that film? That's it. Thank you.
Great questions.
Great question. And also, we discussed that. But my answer is kind of a non-answer. That depends on the project. Because I think sometimes it's very helpful to describe it like very detailed. For me, I think what is important is like, if there's like logical things or so. But describing the sets, sometimes, I don't know, it's a bit difficult, because if there's like a red couch in the script, everybody wants to have a red couch, but it might not be right. It's just like, because there's a huge process from the script. Also, I love when the writers are still involved when we're prepping, so that can be a discussion, and it's not just like the script is here and then do whatever you like, but so it can be a conversation, because I'm sure there was an idea what the red couch means for the writer, but it might not be right after everything that happens, discussions with director, DP, costume designer, and us. So it might be not a couch at all, or a blue one. So I think, yeah, but yeah, you had also something that you said about...
I don't remember. I have something to say now. I don't remember what I said.
Yeah.
Because I'm not actually sure that when I think of my various projects, I remember which one was more descriptive or not. And so that occurred to me as you were asking, and I thought, well, what's interesting is I feel like I always get the job when I see exactly what the director is saying in his mind, and you can tell that in the interview, because we usually bring images and we say, this is what the script reminded me of, and either the director reacts or not. And I find that I get the jobs where we just see the same images. So I ask myself, like, how do we see the same images if it's not said on this? So I think there's a lot more to it. It's almost mystical, like what conjures the images in you and how somebody else sees those images. And I feel like that's when you guys should probably be working together. So I'm not sure if it's from the page, but what I do, which is I think maybe I discussed yesterday, I try to have a meeting with the director super early on, assuming the director wrote the script, which a lot of times is what as my movies are, really, really early, my first week, and ask the director to like block 2 hours of their time and then just go through the script scene by scene and say, okay, is there something here that maybe is important to you, that maybe is not written, but you're probably seeing it in your mind's eye? Let's talk through that. And some directors have a hard time communicating about that stuff, which is also helpful to know early on. But it's very helpful to ask those questions and actually prod a little bit, because first you discover some things that come really deep from the subconscious of a person, but also you discover where maybe you stumbled upon, you're like, oh, interesting, I didn't realize. I didn't see it this exact, like, oh, this minor detail here, it didn't occur to me. So I find these early conversations about the script are really helpful, and that's more important, I think, than for me than describing the sets.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of both. Like sometimes when there's like very detailed description, I really enjoy it. Like I find it fascinating that someone, you know, saw something and put it in words. Other times it's just fun to even just get something like I found with The Great. It's so interesting the way the dialogue is written that I remember sort of reading the dialogue and having and feeling the rhythm of the way this, you know, the episodes unfolded, and therefore that conjured images in my mind. Like I felt like there were long dialogues, and so people needed to pace, and so I saw long corridors, and also because of often like palaces have long corridors or big stairways, and I was like, you know, that conjured images. So it's not necessarily like the red couch or the red cup or something. But I forgot the second question.
Is there a film that you wish you were that you had designed?
Yeah, Roofman. You know that. I recently watched Roofman after spending some time with Inbal, and I'm obsessed with it. Like so when tell me more, like how you did all those changes. But I thought it was just such a fun design movie, and like so much detail in the set dressing. And I remember you saying that it was a hard one and a small movie, and it doesn't, you know, I watched it in a very small screen coming back from Sundance, and I wish I hadn't, but I was like amazed at the amount of detail that went into it. So yeah, that's what I can say, not because it's her, but because it's the one that
I'm so touched.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was actually going to say that I feel that there is never one way of doing a design, right? And that's actually helpful sometimes to tell myself, because I can get really upset about like the couch, right? But it's actually, there's many different ways to design, and what happens, I'm sure, to all of us is that sometimes we interview for films or we receive the script and someone else ends up designing them. And so maybe you've already conjured those first images, but you never ended up designing the film, and then you see the final result. And so you have this interesting, I don't know if you guys have that thought exercise, right? Like, oh, this is what it ended up like. And a lot of time, it's never the way I had imagined it, right? So I just think to myself, wow, we are all so different, and we have our totally different processes of making a film. So a film could look so many different ways. So I don't feel like I have a film I wish I had designed. I'm always so intrigued to see what other people come up with.
Feel the same, yeah.
I have one last question to you guys, because we're almost at the end of our talk. And I just seeing, as there's a lot of emerging filmmakers here, and also, of course, our colleagues, what advice would you give people about this almost like tightrope walk of trying to balance the chaos of creativity and filmmaking with the control that you need to actually make something appear on screen?
Try to embrace it.
Embrace the chaos?
Yeah, as long as you can, and as long as it feels good. You know, at a certain point you might need to, I don't know, do something against it, but it will always be there. It's part of our life, it's part of our jobs, it's part of like also our private lives, like confusion and chaos is always there. So I don't know, try to embrace it and enjoy what it gives you or can give you. But yeah, if it gets too much, of course we have to navigate and then also stick together and I don't know, find the focus I don't know, support each other and or as a designer, I don't know if it works out, but the ideal is like I try to be the anchor and the compass and not add to the chaos. I don't know if that works out all the time, but I'm trying to.
You are.
You totally are. Give us some of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
I would say, I don't know, like trust your instincts in situations where it's chaotic, and also try not to let the chaos take you down, like when you know that when you're finding it so difficult to come up with solutions or to deal with your own chaos, like try not to let that sort of make you second guess that you're the right person for this job, because that can happen. And also, like, sometimes you can fail, like it happens. So I've been in situations where I'm like, I can't. And it's like, I mean, I can't think of any time that I've actually stepped away, but like sometimes I think that enjoy it, but also like it's not always possible to come out of chaos. Sometimes it is bigger than you.
Yeah, I agree so wholeheartedly with everything you said. And in fact, Cora, your note made me remember a film I did that gave me like a very strong insight on this topic. It's called God's Creatures, and it's shot in Ireland, and it's about oyster farmers. And so much of their work happens in a bay and is controlled by the tides. So we shot a large part of the film in the water in this bay, and in order to shoot in the water, it's basically a production nightmare. And we were in our, water gear every day during prep, trying to figure out how to know the tides so that we could figure out how to shoot these scenes with all of our oyster farming equipment and so on. And we got we kind of unraveled as we're like trying to control the tides. We all had the little book that the oyster farmers have in Ireland, where it says every day what the tides is. And our poor AD, he kind of went down the rabbit hole, and he would drive every day for an hour to get to the bay, and he would send us these video calls like, today it's 1.3 meters, and it's like he's checking the book, and it never corresponded. We're just like, it was at some point I kind of stepped away, and I'm like, it's going to be impossible to figure out what our shoot days are going to be like. We just are not going to know. And at that moment in the universe, it was also really, really deep COVID. And we were in this situation that was so much larger than us, and making movies was really, really difficult for anyone who made movies at that time. And you felt like completely out of control, right? And so it all kind of corresponded to me with that moment in history kind of, and what we were trying to do, control nature. And I was reading the Greek Stoics at the time, and they're all about like letting go of control, and it all sort of made sense to me. So I went really deep in, and I sort of told myself the way to work it's a bit like the serenity prayer that I think they teach at AA, is like, recognize what is in your control and let go of everything that's out of your control. But recognizing that line, to me, is actually the greatest challenge. So knowing what you can actually affect and knowing exactly what to let go, that's what I try to think of on any job. On that note, I think we're out of time. So we're so thankful to all of you for being here. We hope you share your confusion with us and thank you to everybody.